What happens when a father holds visions too heavy for silence? Enoch called his sons together. His face carried the weight of destiny, yet his voice trembled with compassion. "Come close," he said, "for I must speak while the Spirit is still with me. What do you give your children when the future itself is in your hands?" He looked at Methuselah, then to the brothers gathered in the dim light. "Love righteousness," he urged. "Do not follow it with a divided heart. Do not walk with those who love deceit. Let righteousness guide you like a lamp in the night. It will never betray you." But what happens when the whole world turns against the light? Enoch's words grew heavy. "I have seen what is coming. Violence will spread across the earth. Sin will rise until the ground shakes beneath it. And the Lord will not remain silent. His judgment will fall." The air was still. His sons leaned forward, their eyes wide, waiting for what would come next. The summons was spoken, righteousness was the only road left, and the storm had already begun. When sin doubles, heaven descends. The storm Enoch warned of was no longer distant, it had already begun to break. His sons felt the weight of his words, but still he pressed on. What happens when violence becomes the language of the earth? He spoke of a time when corruption would rise like a flood, drowning justice and truth. Men would forsake wisdom, and hearts once pure would bow before lies. Apostasy would spread unchecked, and every city would tremble beneath its own bloodshed. What becomes of a world when even the holy places fall? Enoch's eyes darkened. "Idols will collapse," he said. "The temples of nations will burn to the ground. The works of deceit will be torn up from their roots. And when the last cries of blasphemy echo through the earth, heaven itself will answer." The sons shivered. They could almost hear the fire in his voice, the footsteps of judgment moving closer, like thunder rolling across the sky. What hope remains when wrath walks the earth? Yet even in the vision of destruction, there was a spark. For after the fire and ash, something new would rise, something brighter than the ruin left behind. From the storm of judgment, a dawn would break, and eyes long blinded would finally open. The calendar of God begins to turn. From the ashes of judgment, time itself was divided into weeks, each carrying its own destiny. Enoch lifted his voice and revealed what was written. What happens when one man is chosen to carry a promise for all? In the second week, he said, wickedness would rise. Deceit would spread like roots beneath the soil. Yet even then, one man would be saved, and through him the plant of righteousness would grow. What follows when visions reach the hearts of men? By the third week, a chosen line would be established, a family marked forever as the seed of truth. And in the fourth, holy visions would be poured out, guiding generations still unborn. And then the fifth, the house of glory. A dwelling of strength and dominion, built to stand as a sign for all nations. Its stones would shine with purpose, a place where the law of God would be set for every people. But what becomes of glory when blindness spreads across the earth? The calendar moved forward like a great wheel, yet even as light rose, a shadow was waiting to fall. Blind hearts, burning houses. The wheel of time turned again, and Enoch's voice grew heavier. The sixth week opened with darkness, and men closed their eyes to wisdom. They trusted their own strength, but their hearts were blind. What happens when a people forget the light? He warned that the house of dominion, built to last forever, would not endure. Flames would rise against its walls, and the fire would consume its glory. What was meant to stand as a sign for all generations would crumble into ash. And when the smoke cleared, what remained of the chosen ones? Enoch spoke of a scattering. The people marked for righteousness would be driven across the earth, strangers in lands not their own. Yet even in exile, the promise was not broken. What does God place in the hands of the faithful when the world turns against them? At the end of the seventh week, wisdom would return, sevenfold, overflowing, more radiant than before. A hidden teaching revealed, guiding those who still listened. Blindness had brought fire and scattering, but in the silence after ruin, the seeds of greater wisdom began to stir. After the sword, a house that never falls. Enoch lifted his voice again, and his sons felt the weight of a new age. The eighth week would not be like the ones before it. What happens when judgment itself is placed into human hands? A sword of justice would be given to the righteous. With it, they would rise against their oppressors. The violent, the deceitful, the corrupt, all would be delivered into their power. The balance of the earth would shift, and the guilty would finally face the scales they had mocked. But what is built after the sword has done its work? Enoch spoke of a house unlike any other. It would not rest on blood or gold. It would not crack beneath fire or storm. This house would belong to the great king, and it would stand forever. Its foundation was righteousness, its walls justice, its roof the eternal glory of God. Nations would see it and know that truth had taken root on the earth. And yet, the vision was not complete. The sword had cleared the path, and the house had risen, but the story of judgment was still being written. When the first heaven passes, who will stand? Enoch's voice carried the weight of eternity. The ninth week would shake the world itself. Across every nation, judgment would fall. The godless would vanish, their works erased as if they had never been. Their monuments, their names, their glory, all swept away like dust in the wind. What happens when the builders of lies meet the truth face to face? He told his sons that the 10th week would be unlike anything seen before. It would be the week of the great judgment, when even the fallen angels, those who once defied the throne of heaven, would be brought low. No power, no kingdom, no secret would shield them from the hand of God. But what becomes of creation when heaven itself is changed? Enoch spoke of the first heaven passing away. In its place, a new heaven would rise, brighter than before, blazing with a sevenfold light. The stars themselves would tremble, yet in that trembling, a new dawn would break. And those who clung to righteousness would not be consumed. They would stand in the light, unshaken, while all else crumbled into silence. Judgment would sweep the earth, but before the faithful, two paths were opening, one into light, the other into ruin. Choose your road, or the road chooses your end. Enoch's eyes swept over his sons, and his words cut like fire. Two paths lay before them, one of life, one of death. What happens when a man walks in righteousness? He said the way of righteousness is steady, like a lamp burning through the night. It leads to peace, to safety, to a house that endures. Those who choose it will never be abandoned. But what becomes of those who walk in violence? Enoch warned that every step on the road of blood leads only to destruction. The path may seem wide, but it ends in fire. And when it ends, nothing built upon it will remain. To guide the generations to come, he placed before them the book of wisdom, a testimony written for all time. Within its words lay light for the righteous and warning for the foolish. And above them all, heaven itself kept record. Every choice, every secret deed, written in lines that could not be erased. Two roads stretched before mankind, but the blood-stained palaces of the wicked already bore their sentence. Woe to palaces built on blood, yet eagles still rise. Enoch's words struck like thunder. The rulers who trusted in wealth, the rich who crushed the poor, the liars who mocked the truth, their time was short. What happens when a palace is raised on broken backs? He warned that every wall built on injustice would crack. Gold would not shield them. Silver would not save them. Their riches would rise up as witnesses, testifying against them. And when the day came, their houses would fall in a single breath, and their names would vanish with the dust. But what of those who choose righteousness? Enoch's tone shifted. He spoke of hope, of wings that cut the storm. Your children, he said, will rise like eagles, higher than vultures that circle death. They will not be crushed with the wicked, but will find refuge in the clefts of the rock. What becomes of the weary who have carried the burden of faith? For them, a healing light would shine. A voice of rest would call down from heaven, promising peace. While the world mourned in sorrow, the righteous would find their strength renewed. The downfall of the wicked was certain, but the heavens themselves were preparing to bear witness. The cosmos keeps your receipts. Enoch's voice shook with certainty. Nothing done on earth would stay hidden, for the heavens themselves were watching. What happens when the sky becomes the courtroom? He spoke of the sun, the moon, and the stars, silent witnesses, marking every deed. Even the clouds, the rain, and the dew would rise to testify. When men turned from righteousness, the heavens would close their gates. Rain would be withheld, and storms would fall instead. And what of the day when judgment finally arrives? Enoch described a fire that would sweep across the earth. The arrogant would tremble, and even the stars would shiver in their places. No lie could escape the blaze. No sin could remain in the shadows. But what becomes of those who walk in righteousness? From the heavenly tablets, treasures were promised, joy, peace, and honor stored for the faithful. Their names were written in light, never to be erased. And for the wicked? Sheol opened its gates, chains prepared for those who chose violence and deceit. Their end was darkness, their reward a furnace without mercy. The earth may have shamed the righteous, but heaven was ready to lift them onto thrones of light. Thrones of light, seasons of judgment. Enoch's voice grew calm, but the silence around him felt heavy. He spoke of a day when the Lord himself would summon the righteous. What happens when those born in darkness are touched by eternal light? The faithful, once despised, would be transformed. their wounds would turn into crowns. Each would be lifted to a throne of glory, shining brighter than the morning star. Their names would be spoken in heaven, remembered where no hand could blot them out. And what becomes of the sinners who mocked the truth? They would be led into their appointed seasons of judgment. No gold could ransom them, no shadow could hide them. Their names would be erased, their works forgotten, their memory turned into dust. What remains when sin itself is silenced? A new age would dawn. Righteousness would fill heaven and earth, and sin would be buried forever, never to rise, never to be spoken again. Final beat. Walk in the path that outlives fire, for only that road leads to eternity. When the book closes, Kiske Nam Roshni Mein Retahai.